perishable food. But here's the good news. For Patriots, the trusted preparedness companies
International reaction coming into the sudden death of Alexei Navalny last week. Western leaders blaming Russian President Vladimir Putin for it. ABC News Chief Global Affairs correspondent Mark Raddatz reports from Ukraine.
U.S. Ambassador to Russia, Lynn Tracy, sent vague flowers at the Solovetsky stone in Moscow, writing on X, "We express our deepest condolences to the family, colleagues, and supporters of Alexei Navalny. His strength is an inspiring example. We honor his memory." His wife, Yulia, remembering her husband on social media, writing simply, "I love you."
Rain, wind, and snow slamming much of California. Los Angeles hit with heavy downpours today. Tomorrow, the Bay Area will get it, courtesy of another West Coast atmospheric river. 2 Minnesota police officers and a paramedic shot and killed as they responded to a domestic call over the weekend that happened just south of Minneapolis. This is ABC News. Russia now says it has quashed the latest pockets of resistance in the eastern Ukrainian city of Avdiivka. Russia and Ukraine have been battling over that city for months now. There's a new mission to space to clean up some space trash.
A small Japanese satellite launched from New Zealand has been given instructions to meet up with and inspect a 3-ton, 33-foot-long rocket cylinder that was launched in 2009. It's one of the thousands of pieces of man-made space floating in Earth's orbit, posing potential threats to future space missions. Assuming the mission is successful, another spacecraft will be launched later to try to launch that used rocket into a lower orbit to get it to burn in Earth's atmosphere. Jim White, BBC News.
And about that old advice about fixing your wet iPhone by dropping it in a big bowl of uncooked rice? To draw the water out, Apple updating its suggestions, warning that little pieces of rice can actually hurt your iPhone more. The advice to eat the rice for dinner and instead tablet. Sherry Preston, ABC News.
What if the star in your life, the greatest gift in the world? Name a star after that. This is Rocky Motel with International Star Registry. $59 and call tomorrow. Visit
connected with real local radio wherever you are with the free WHBY mobile app. Download now for Apple and Android. Thanks to Christensen Heating and Air Conditioning. Here's the latest from the WHBY Omni-Glass and Paint News Center.
Good morning. It's a partly cloudy 32 degrees at 10:04. I'm Lincoln Moore. Governor Tony Evers signs new legislative district maps into law. Evers says the maps are fair, responsive, and reflect the will of the people.
First, these maps are fair. We're aiming to make sure every party has a fair shake at winning the legislature. Second, these maps are responsive. Under these maps, we'll see more competitive contested races by making it more likely that legislative districts could from one party's control and when voters' preferences change. And finally, these maps reflect the will of the people. Under these maps, the people will be able to elect Republican majorities or Democrat majorities, or even split the legislature if they want.
The maps, which were proposed by Evers, break up heavy concentrations of Democratic support in urban areas into more districts and require a number of incumbent Republicans to run against each other. Republicans pushed forward the maps to prevent the state Supreme Court from drawing new districts for this year. Oshkosh Area School District is changing its advanced learning program. Assistant Superintendent for Instruction Samuel Coleman says the ALPS program will no longer operate as a charter school.
Our intention is to maintain the ALPS programming located at Tippler Middle School. However, we will not maintain that programming as a charter separate from Tippler School.
60 students are currently enrolled in the ALPS program in grades 4 through 8. Criminal charges are filed against a Waupun Correctional Institution inmate accused of trying to kill his cellmate. William LaSalle faces one count of attempted first-degree intentional homicide in Dodge County Court. According to the criminal complaint, LaSalle stabbed his cellmate multiple times last month. The victim was taken to UW Hospital in Madison with life-threatening injuries. LaSalle was serving a sentence for battery by prisoner. He faces another 40 years in prison if convicted. The Fond du Lac Humane Society has a new leader. Ariana Herbst-Cram has taken over as executive director. Herbst-Cram had been a development coordinator for Advocate Aurora Health and worked at the Greater Fox Cities Area Habitat for Humanity before that. Your first alert forecast from Action 2 News is next. WHBY News is brought to you by The Law.
I don't know about you, but it's going to take a while before I can hear the word maps again. That'll be quicker. Talk about that saga that's been going on since before I moved out here, Landon. That's probably some of the best news my listeners could have possibly see. So it looks like, at least for the time being, it is finally put to bed.
Yes, it appears that we won't be getting the state Supreme Court in this, but of course, you never know.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath on it. Thanks a lot, Landon. You're super.
Do you want to protect your family? Do you want to maintain control of your health and finances? Join the attorneys with law office in person for their Will's First Trust Seminar. This seminar gives participants the opportunity to ask questions and learn about the aspects of estate planning and long-term care planning that they are most interested in. The next session will take place in person at 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. on Wednesday, February 21st at Neville Public Museum. Today, register to attend either session. EstatePlanningLive.com. The seating is very limited, so you want to RSVP right away. Registered participants will receive complimentary educational materials and have an opportunity to ask questions during the session. And you'll also receive a free copy of their book, Will's First Trust. Register for the in-person session on Wednesday, February 21st in Green Bay at EstatePlanningLive.com today. Here's your first alert weather on WHBY.
Filtered sun and clouds, a little bit milder this afternoon with a high of 40 degrees. Tonight, milky moonlight, cold but calm, a low of 26. Tomorrow, Tuesday, milder, 47, partly sunny with a brisk south wind in the afternoon. From the WBAY First Alert Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Steve Ayla.
49 degrees outside the Miller Construction Studio, and I do not have an accurate description of what I couldn't begin to speculate. We'll be back in 60. Wesley Glenn Angelsburg is no longer. This story is part of the WHBY Outside the Box is brought to you by Hooper Law Office, providing a pathway to your legacy. We got maps, party people. If you weren't listening to the top of the hour news there, officially, Governor Evers has signed the legislative map that he drew himself into law. I'm not holding my breath yet. I'm still going to wait and see for any kind of subterfuge that might take place between now and Election Day. But I'll tell you what, for all intents and purposes, we have made it to the other side of this discussion. I almost don't know how to feel. It's like saying goodbye to a family member. The maps discussion has been such a vibrant part of this show. I really don't know where to take it from here. I'm sure something. You missed. of an anti-Semitic, Islamophobic person in Russia who happened to say negative things about the other guy in Russia that we also don't like. That was getting the wall-to-wall coverage. And the Super Bowl shooters get pushed to the back burner. The police officer shootings get pushed to the back burner. And time again, I will tell you right now, and I don't like that I'm talking this way because I've talked on about this weekend, and you never want to sound like Ann Coulter. But if this person were a Trump supporter, the story would not have left the mainstream. I defy somebody to tell me that I am wrong. The only reason it is not the biggest covered 24/7 story is because it's same old, gang violence is run amok. And nobody wants to address the realities that gangs propagate in areas that are poor. And in a state like Missouri, where 1 in 7 people is destitute, gangs are prevalent. And in order to be able to allow some of these gangs to be stomped out, it would require an investment of billionaire tax dollars into communities that have been underfunded for decades. Yet the stories you hear about that is Jeff Bezos is getting ready to move his residency to California so he can save $600 million in taxes. The guy makes $2.1 billion a day, but he's looking for that loophole to save $600 million on his yearly taxes by moving to Florida. And so instead, what we get is a bunch of milquetoast coverage of these kind of outbursts of violence. We'll get extensive coverage of it if the shooter fits a profile of somebody that we want to highlight, whether it's black people for Fox News or MAGA people for MSNBC and CNN. But if it doesn't fit one of those two, we're moving on. The idea that we are comfortable living in a country where a Super Bowl parade shooting disappears from the mainstream in less than 72 hours should not be a country that we are okay with living in. And gun rights activists are happy because we're not having a conversation about common sense gun reform. You can go down the list of all the different lobbying groups that are happy that we are just moving on from this story almost as quickly as it happened. It is not lost on me that this happened, and we should not be comfortable with allowing our indignation, our frustration to be manipulated by what gets put in the mainstream. This is a big story. The fact that it doesn't fit whatever group you're looking for doesn't make it any more or less relevant to what we were dealing with. But it only seems as though school shootings, understandably, get a bunch of coverage. But it doesn't change the fact that if 7 people that aren't in school get shot, that's still a really big deal and doesn't happen in most other countries. Not a whole lot else can be said in terms of gun control, and I'll be the first to admit that. I barely touched on it. We talked about it for 2 straight hours the day after the shooting happened, and we barely even touched on gun control because nothing else can be said at this point. Much like Steve from Green Bay, who called at the end of the last hour, said, we know what's wrong. That we have. We have models around the country that show us what programs work and what ones don't. But instead, we choose to remain blissfully ignorant or willfully ignorant and bury our heads in the sand to obvious solutions. 3 people just trying to save people lost their lives over the weekend. 1 person lost their life celebrating their team's victory, and 20 more could have. And God forbid it could have been a lot worse than what it was. And realistically, while it disappears from the mainstream, how many of you would feel comfortable at a Super Bowl party the next year, or parade the next year, or any parade? What kind of peace of mind do you have? But instead, let's sweep it under the rug because we can't put this on Donald Trump somehow. Or let's blow it out of proportion and say, why can't we have a family unit in these black communities? So those are our two options for what we get. And if we can't squeeze into one of those two narratives, we're moving on. It's incredibly frustrating to me that they're clearly picking and choosing what to outrage us with. It hit so close to home over the weekend. Every time I would turn it on and you could not escape Russia in the news, something that hasn't been in the news for the better part of a year. And as you notice, as the absolute massacre of people in Gaza continues going on, all of a sudden the day-to-day updates on Israel military exercises don't find themselves in the mainstream anymore. But you best believe the second we're talking about not funding Israel, we'll have stories about Hamas doing terrible things around the peripheral of Israel. I promise you that's the case. It's the fact that it's not flattering right now is why you're not getting shepherded into thinking a certain way about these stories. And we almost don't even realize that it's happening. It's almost like if a movie came out that was blatantly a satire of propaganda and half the people watching it realized that it was not, that they just thought it was a cool action movie and not making some kind of grander statement about military action around the world. That might be how we find ourselves in that kind of situation today. But my heart goes out to the officers and firefighters who lost their life over the weekend. It's such a dangerous job, and I feel like the people of power that have the power to make it a little bit safer, somewhat tolerable, instead would rather just hyper-arm those people so we get more violence coming from the other way, instead of doing something to address why people are so angry, so frustrated, and so violent in the first place. It's a shame as far as I'm concerned. Incredibly disappointing one of that. But how's that for a happy start to your Monday? Hope everyone had a good weekend. We, thankfully, I get my butt saved every day at the end of the show by Haley Tenpass, always in a pleasant mood and a nice change of pace from what we talked about on this show. It's her birthday today, actually. Very excited to hear how the weekend went. It was a birthday weekend in the Haley household, so we'll be jumping into that, and I'm sure what she has coming up on her show as well. Stay right where you are, guys. This is Outside the Box with Ben Thomas. You're on W.
Radio Network. After the Cowboys' early exit from the playoffs this past season, owner Jerry Jones recently committed to being, quote, all in on the 2024 season. Linebacker Michael Parsons responded by saying he hopes Dallas acquires the players the team was missing, which includes getting nasty interior linemen and also giving running back Tony Pollard another shot. Despite eclipsing the 1,000-yard rushing mark for a second straight season, Pollard's yards per carry average dropped from 5.2 in 2022 to 4.0 in 2023. Meanwhile, veteran corner Patrick Peterson says he has no plans to retire heading into his 14th NFL season, but he's not sure if his career will continue with the Steelers. Peterson has 1 year left on a 2-year contract and is due to count $9.78 million against the salary cap in 2024. This has been NFL Network Now. Radio Network.
A lot can happen.
Suicide rate amongst people who have transitioned is astronomically high. It's not the kids who are confused and have a mental illness that are killing themselves. That's just a bunch of BS, but they repeat it time and time again. It's Mark Reardon in for Brian Kilmeade. This is the Brian Kilmeade Show.
Honest commentary, unique opinions, no agenda. It's Brian Kilmeade.
Storm Team 5 with the most accurate weather forecast with 93.9 and 1490 WOSH.
Hi, I'm Henry Winkler. My eyes are very important to me. Specialist about FDA-approved treatment. This message indeed reads me
Yes, no ASAP. So what you want to do is apply for an extension as quickly as you can. That gives you until October to actually file and get a rate in place. We will definitely talk about that deadline. So we go an extension. It's the time of non-administrative during all receivers.
More Brian Kilmeade Show is coming up on your connection to Oshkosh News.
Ryan's off this week. This is Mark Bearden filling in today. I want to talk about the working class in this country. My friend Selena Zito, who wrote the book The Great Revolt in the aftermath of what happened with Trump in 2016, she traveled the country. She saw what was happening. I had people tell me, Trump's going to win. You have blue-collar Democrats that are going to vote for him. And I think to a certain extent some of this is happening right now. And maybe even with the issue that we just talked about with gender, not necessarily a traditional working class issue, but there are warnings out there for the Democrats. There's a guy that I like quite a bit. His name is Ry Teixeira. He writes for the Liberal Patriot. He's a Democrat consultant that's been very vocal, sort of along the lines of David Axelrod and Carvin, just sort of warning the Democrats that they're not, on the page that they should be when it comes to these issues. And in the piece that he wrote a couple of weeks ago relating to the working class, he said, look, this is a working class election. It's not the working class that see the police as an unnecessary evil and oppose rigorous enforcement of the law for public safety. It's not the working class that believes public consumption of hard drugs should be tolerated. It's not the working class that believes many crimes like shoplifting should be decriminalized because punishing the perpetrators would have disparate impact. It's not the working class that believes you should never refer to illegal immigrants as illegal and that border security is somehow a racist idea, right? It's not the working class that believes that an overwhelming surge of migrants at the southern border should be accommodated with asylum claims, parole arrangements, and release into urban areas around the country. And by the way, he wrote this piece probably 3 weeks ago. It's gotten worse since then in urban areas. It's not the working class that believes competitive admissions and job placements should be allocated on the basis of equity, of race rather, not merit. And I think that I would pull and I think Ryan did. It's not the working class that thinks sex is assigned at birth and can be changed by self-conception rather than being an objective biological reality. These are all issues that are not falling along the lines of the Democrats right now. But there are more challenges beyond that. But this is, I think Ryan's right, this is a working class election, and that gender issue, it's a culture issue, but it's one that independent voters, I think, deeply care about. It has been a thrill filling in for Brian Kilmeade. This is the Brian Kilmeade Show.
Paid for by Christian Care Ministries.
You see a huge group of people. I mean, they're told to do something. This may not be. People, and they're joining Medishare. Why? Medishare is a much more
ABC News, I'm Sherry Preston. President Biden back at the White House after spending the weekend in Delaware. The president says it's shocking that the House Republicans are walking away from meeting obligations that the U.S. has promised to Ukraine in its fight against Russia. ABC's Stephen Portnoy has more on another attempt at getting something passed.
This emerging bipartisan compromise in the House, crafted by rank-and-file members, contains a smaller foreign aid package than the Senate passed, and it contains a time-limited border component, reinstating the Remain in Mexico requirement for a year. The bill would provide close to $48 billion for Ukraine and more than $10 billion for Israel. Its authors are now seeking additional co-sponsors, but there's been no indication that Speaker Mike Johnson is inclined to put it on the floor.
Wisconsin's Democratic governor has signed new legislative district maps into law. Republicans chose Tony Evers' maps rather than having the liberal-controlled state Supreme Court draw up the lines. The districts will be in place for November. This is ABC News. Another cargo ship has been hit in the Red Sea by Houthi rebels from Yemen.
Speaking in Sana, Houthi military spokesman Yahya Saree says the vessel, the Ruby Mar, was hit and is at risk in the Gulf of Aden. The crew was reportedly abandoned ship. The private security firm Ambry reports the vessel had been on its way to Bulgaria after leaving the United Arab Emirates. Ambry describes it as being partially laden with cargo. It's not immediately clear what it's carrying. Tom Rivers, ABC News of the Foreign Desk.
The Pentagon confirming one of its airstrikes over the weekend targeted an underwater drone used by the Houthis to attack ships. There may be some trouble for the world's most famous plumber.
Hey, Mario!
Several reports say the next generation of the Switch device will be delayed. Arrive until early 2025. Sherry Preston, ABC News.
Give the start of your life the greatest gift in the world.